and welcome to the next edition of the Weichert Reports video blog. My name is Brandon Weichert, founder and CEO of the Weichert Report. The drink tonight is the Yamakazi. It is a single malt whiskey, and it is a fantastic drink. This is my second time having the beverage. It was a gift from a friend, and it has been a very enjoyable drink tonight. This is my third glass. I'd like to talk a little bit tonight, continuing with our series talking about what's going on in Syria. I'd like to talk a little bit about tonight about the geostrategic implications for Iran. In my previous video blog, I addressed the issue of Russia and their role in Syria. I also talked a little bit about what was going to happen in a article that I published at the Weichert Report called The Great Pipeline War, in which I talked about Russia, Turkey, and what they were hoping to gain, and Iran, and what they were hoping to gain out of the energy side. Basically, there's $1 billion pipeline deal going through that will transfer natural gas from the Middle East through Syria and into Europe. And so I wrote an article on that, and that will be linked to in the comments section. But tonight I want to talk specifically about what's going on vis-a-vis Iran and the Shia crescent. Now, for the uninitiated, the Shia crescent is essentially the Shiite diaspora that exists outside of the Iranian borders. You see, and as we've documented in other works at the Weichert Report, there is a divide in Islam between two primary factions. There are other factions like the Sufis, but two primary factions: Sunni Islam and Shia Islam. The United States currently is engaged in combat against a particular sect of Sunni Islam, the Wahhabists, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, Al-Nusra, Al-Shabaab, and the like. These are Wahhabi groups. The Shiites, in particular the Mahdists, are the ruling group in charge of Iran. Iran is majority Shiite. It is, for the Middle East, for the Muslim world, Iran is a minority in the sense that a majority of Muslims happen to be Sunni. And so Iran is very interested in not only maintaining its territorial integrity, which, as you may or may not know, Iran was formerly known as Persia, which, going back to antiquity, pre-Islam, the borders of Iran have remained relatively the same. So today, Iran, the Shiites in Iran, the Mahdists in particular, have been very interested in expanding their influence beyond Iranian borders. They view themselves as the heirs of not only the one true interpretation of Islam, but also the heirs of the great Persian empires of old. As such, the Iranians have spent a considerable amount of money and political capital building up a network of support outside of their borders in the Middle East. And the goal is to create essentially a Shiite-dominated sphere of influence in the Middle East. One of the key pivot points, if you will, in the geostrategic environment has been Syria. The Assad regime has been a consistent ally of Iran. This should not surprise anyone because Syria is run by the Assad family. The Assad family are Alawites, and the Alawites are a subgroup, a subsect of Shia Islam. So, and not to mention the fact that they're united by anti-American fervor and anti-Israeli fervor and the like. So, from the outset of this Syrian civil war in 2011, the Iranians have lent considerable aid and support to maintaining Bashar al-Assad's power. And so, as we're watching this whole thing unfold right now, there's a litany of things that we need to look at. It is likely, as I documented at the Weigert Report in the Great Pipeline article, it is likely that with the Russian support and with Iranian backing, as well as now with the Turks getting involved, they want the pipeline that Russia's backing to go through. They want to have transit fees in Turkey. So now predominantly Sunni Turkey is aligned with Iran and Russia to back Assad in the civil war. But it's likely that Iran now is going to benefit mightily from what will be a peaceful, or not a peaceful, but a successful settlement, a successful peace deal that sees the Assad regime and the Alawites remaining in power. This has got a litany of positives for Iran. First and foremost, Syria is a key transit point for weapons and personnel pouring into places like Lebanon, as well as into the Gaza Strip, Palestinian territories. Iran backs Hezbollah, the terrorist organization in Lebanon, predominantly, and they also lend considerable support to the political arm of Hezbollah, which is Hamas, operating in the Gaza in the Palestinian territories. Keeping Syria in Iran's camp means that Iran gets to continue to use Syria as a transit point for their personnel and weapons and materials. It also gives them significant influence, particularly now that Assad is beholden to Iran for his power. It gives Iran significant influence outside of their borders. So this is a big win for Iran. It's a windfall because essentially, you see, the United States had Iran in a quasi containment until a few years ago. The United States was positioned in Iraq on the one side, then there's Iran, and then you have Afghanistan. Not to mention the fact that the United States was allied with Saudi Arabia, which is staunchly anti-Iranian, because Saudi Arabia, of course, not only is Sunni, but it is the home of the Wahhabi sect, the extremist sect, the extremist ideology that the United States is engaged in combat with, which complicates matters. But Iran was relatively contained because the Sunni kingdoms and Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, they all managed to keep Iran at bay. Russia was not so much a significant player until recently in the region. So what this meant was that the United States could prevent Iran from gaining advantage in its Shia crescent. There's populations outside of Iran, and if you look at a map at the diaspora, it almost is kind of a crescent, a half moon kind of, from Iran out down to Syria. And so within this crescent, Iran tries to exert influence over those ethnic, religious Persians and Shiites outside of their borders in order to increase their political standing in the region at the expense of others, i.e. Israel, the United States, and the Sunni kingdoms. With Syria, though, Iran has now been able to secure its ally in Syria, but even more importantly, it used the predominantly Shiite government of Iraq, the government that the United States helped to establish following the Iraqi invasion. It's creating new contacts in Iraq, allowing for Iranian overflights of Iraqi airspace into Syria. These overflights are transporting Iranian revolutionary and guards and Badr forces and Quds forces into Syria to support the regime. But also now it's allowing Iran to send the revolutionary guards to and Shiite militias to back the Iraqi government in its ongoing war against the Islamic State, which occupies a component of the predominantly Sunni northwestern region of Iraq. So basically, this is a very bad situation. This is being compounded now by the Obama administration's ill-fated nuclear deal, if you want to call it a deal, with Iran. So Iran was already close to getting the bomb. But now we're ensuring that Iran's going to get the bomb. And you couple that with all of these recent movements and victories in Iran's geostrategic environment, and you're seeing the creation of a very potent and destabilizing, from America's standpoint, regional hegemon in Iran. A regional hegemon, by the way, that is married to a modest, therefore apocalyptic, religious worldview, which is very disturbing to say the least. So, from the Syrian settlement, there's a few things that we can expect, or the pending Syrian settlement, there's a few things that we can expect. The first is that Iran will have secured its ally in Syria. It will also be a serious beneficiary of this proposed pipeline. Also, one can expect Iran to be almost impossible, well, next to impossible, to be contained in the way that it was before. America is currently pulling back from the Middle East. We are engaging the Islamic State tepidly. Under incoming President-elect Donald Trump, I suspect we will take that threat far more seriously. But beyond that, I really don't see America committing itself to remaining in the region in a way that prevents Iranian influence. Although, with former General James Mattis as SecDef, that could change. I don't know. It remains to be seen how that dynamic in the Trump national security team plays out. I would hope that he has a considerable influence over the formulation of foreign policy, but time will tell. But until then, some things we can anticipate: Iran will benefit from the oil deal. Iran will have a permanent bridgehead supporting Hezbollah and Hamas in its war against Israel, its terrorist war against Israel. Iran will have also created significant inroads with the predominantly Shiite government of Iraq, which means that it will effectively 80% of Iraq, I believe something like 80% of Iraq is Shiite, which means it will have a considerable sway over 80% of that part of the Middle East. Iran is now also feeling its oats, if you will. The unprecedented success of their operations, not just in Syria, but also against the Islamic State in Iraq, has emboldened the Revolutionary Guard in particular. They are now promising, this is being reported tonight, the Iranians are now promising to seek to destabilize Bahrain, to support allies in the ongoing Yemeni civil war, which, if not for the Syrian civil war, would be the worst situation afflicting the Middle East right now. Iran is seeking to hone their asymmetrical capabilities. They want to support like-minded elements in these civil conflicts in order to overthrow pro-American, pro-Sunni forces, status quo forces in the region, and supplant them with pro-Iranian elements that will intensify the Iranian regional hegemony. So whether they'll be successful or not is going to be determined over the next few years by how serious the Trump administration is about checking Iranian aggression. Pardon me. There's another component to this thing, and that is the Russian component. So the Russians stand to gain significantly, geostrategically speaking, from maintaining the Assad regime in Syria. Not only are they going to keep their air base in Latakia, not only are they going to keep their naval base in Tartus, they're also going to basically have humiliated the United States and the Western powers by ensuring that Assad remains in power, by destroying the or rather the Western, the U.S. and Western supported rebel groups, all at the same time getting credit for fighting terrorism, which they're really not. They're fighting the Western backed anti Assad rebels far more than they're fighting the Islamic State. It's a propaganda victory. They're also going to solidify or reaffirm their budding friendship with the Shiite government in Iran. You see, Ilan Berman, in his book Implosion, which is all about where he thinks the Russian state is going, he has a very negative view on the future of Russia, and I happen to agree with most of what he posits in that book. But he says that it's very important to the Putin regime for them to maintain positive relations with Iran. There's a few different reasons, but basically the Russian government has become wedded to ensuring that the current Iranian regime, the modest regime, remains in power. And so in supporting Assad, they're ensuring that not only are the Iranians going to continue to undercut the Western powers or pro-Western elements in the region, but they're also ensuring that it's going to be that much more difficult for the United States to keep Iran contained. So there are several serious geopolitical issues. Plus, Putin assumes that by keeping Iran placated, the Iranian government might be helpful in curbing some of the more anti-Russian agitations of Muslims, particularly Shiite Muslims, living within Russia's borders. You see, Putin's looking at what's going on in Europe and Britain and saying, I don't want to have that happen vis-a-vis the Muslim immigrants and migrants to these areas. So all in all, the Syrian Civil War is coming to a conclusion. It's a horrific ordeal. I think that the Russian-backed forces are about to prevail. And I think that the United States is going to lose some significant face in this one. For the Iranians, this is a win-win-win for them. And they're going to use their success here not only to continue to humiliate the United States, but they're going to use it to threaten Israel, and they're also going to attempt to intensify and expand their sphere of influence over the region by supporting like-minded rebel groups in the aforementioned civil conflicts going on in the Middle East. All in all, the pending settlement with Syria is not only a boon for Iran and Russia, but it's also a portent of things to come in the region regarding the Iranians' increasing influence. And also, by the way, I believe that the Iranians are going to get the bomb if they don't have it already. So these are the things that the next administration is going to have to contend with. It's a pretty dark world right now. So, but have faith, have a drink, and let's hope that the new year ushers in some better leadership on the part of the West, particularly America. For the Weichert Report, I'm Brandon Weichert, and this has been another of our video blogs. I'm happy to do it, and thank you for your time.